Drunken Wizard coming in with the hot takes. Oh, welcome to America Show. I've made some adjustments to my computer. Is the audio slightly lagging from the video? Is that what's going on? I tried to lower the quality because my computer keeps overheating when I'm not at home. I don't like it on my end, but it looks a little laggy. Well, we'll deal with it tonight. What can you do? When you're as handsome as me, it's difficult to find. Video's a bit choppy. Okay, yeah. It's difficult to find a camera that could capture this beauty. You know, at least on my budget. You gotta... I hope everyone's having a great time. So, last we talked... When did we talk? Friday night? Yeah, I think we did a Friday night stream. Took Saturday off, Sunday off. Here we are, Monday. It's Monday. It's weird to me. I don't feel the days like most people do because my job's not a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I'm coming in to work on Saturdays and Sunday and staying 24/7, so Monday's like sometimes halfway through the week for me. I guess like most people's Wednesdays. I don't know. It feels like a Wednesday. Except, one exception. Today was a beautiful day here in Western Pennsylvania. So I was mighty impressed with that. A little channel update. I'll mention this. So I have a debate coming up Wednesday with Pondering on Devon Archer's testimony. I got called into work Wednesday night. Now I'm still going to do the debate. That's no problem. The problem is, I don't know if I'll be able to stream it. I might have to record it and then upload it. Because if I stream and talk to people on Discord, we're going to try it tonight. If I get any lefties in, we'll try it. But a lot of times what's been happening is my computer's been overheating when I try to talk to someone while at the same time. And God forbid I try to bring up a source while talking to someone. So that could be a nightmare. If I do that debate and am able to stream it, I doubt I'll be able to bring any sources up. I'll probably have to bring them up on the old phone and do it that way. But that's all right. I could still link them to him on Discord through the phone, so that shouldn't be a problem. But, you know, that's what happens when you drink your way through college and then you have to work insane hours to feed your family. What can you say? Sometimes you get called in and there's nothing you could do. So we'll do our best with it, though. It should be fun. I won't have any time to prepare for that debate other than if I do it here on stream tonight or tomorrow, which I'm not going to. So all I really need is to pull up the testimony of Devon Archer. That'll be good enough. I'd like to pull up the Tucker Carlson interview too, but maybe we'll see. I think I tweeted about it and I timestamped it one time, so maybe I could pull it up on X. But I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. A lot going on. We'll talk about a lot here today. Last you saw me, I was talking to Danabo. And I talked to Dylan Burns on Thursday. And then Danabo on Friday. Because Danabo was very upset because he thought I was mischaracterizing Dylan Burns' argument from our previous conversation. Yeah, right, Go Rams. I love it. It's not bad. I like my job, but wish I was home. Anywho, it was a very bizarre situation. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, there's like some irony that goes on with these things. I don't know what to think half the time. Like, I'm not trying to make friends. I think I'm a pretty likable person. I know that sometimes I could come off as abrasive. I try to reciprocate the energy that I'm given. And I talk about that stuff a lot. I'm not always perfect on it. Sometimes I'm more aggressive than I should be. I guess it's something that I'll work on the rest of my life. I guess probably every streamer has some of that. Not so much. Some might be even keel all the way through. But I don't know. I'm certainly not a stoic. I'm sort of the opposite of that. Sometimes I got to remind myself to keep it in control. But I don't get some of the hate that comes my way. Like, that situation was bizarre Friday, if you all missed it. So just to recap, Thursday I talked to Dylan Burns. We were talking about the Gonzalo Lira stuff. And we got into more Ukraine stuff. And I'd mentioned to Dylan that so far I've talked to him multiple times on the Ukraine thing, and from about 2 years ago he said that Russia had already lost, and then about a year ago I debated him and he said, I guess it was a year and a half ago, the first one, he said Russia lost. And then 6 months later I debated him again on a panel, and he says, well, what I meant when I said Russia's already lost, that they won't achieve their goals, keeping NATO from expanding and getting into Kiev, but he couldn't see a world where if we didn't send funding, they would overtake Kiev, or they would only be able to get into Moldova. And the reason this mattered is because we're being sold a line back home. And I think that if Dylan was honest, he would admit this. A lot of the people that are selling this funding, and this is always the case, right? You always oversell when you're trying to sell something, and then you overhype how bad it'll be if you don't do that. That's not new in politics. But it's especially devastating when it comes to foreign policy because, you can see how this leads to something like the Iraq War. Oh, well, it won't be a big deal. We'll go in, it'll be a day or two, no big deal. It'll help us out immensely. They have weapons of mass destruction. If we don't go, then Saddam will do all this in Libya and Syria and Afghanistan. And you can see, like, in Afghanistan, how that leads. Like, we're being told for 20 years we're in Afghanistan. And, like, every year they're like, oh, yeah, it's going great. Everything's going great in Afghanistan. Any day now we'll be able to pull out. We're a year away. We'll be able to pull out. And, the Afghani government will stand on its own. And it was all lies. We were lied to. I think there was 12 generals in charge of the Afghan conflict. None of them told us the truth. And as soon as we... And the irony is, we're told, like, everybody says it. They're like, well, we knew when we pulled out that it was, the Afghan army would collapse. Did we know that? That's not what we were told. That's not what we, the members of the public, were told. Not at all. That's not what the Biden administration told us. That's not what the generals under Biden and Trump and Obama and Bush, none of them said that. None of them said within 2 weeks it'll be a disaster. Heck, even if they didn't even say, like, look, they won't last long, or might only last a couple of years. No one was saying that. No one told us that we would arm the Taliban, the very group that we were there fighting. What's up, Minuteman 23? No one said that. So they sell you these things back home, and it's, to put it politely, grossly hyperbolic. And so we could hear from Republicans even, and certainly Democrats, we have to fight Russia over there so we don't fight over here. In fact, if not only is that what our politicians are saying, this matriculates down to, like, the anonymous user level on X. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people where they'll say something like this: small price to pay, $60 billion here, $60 billion there, small price to pay, so we don't have to physically fight Russia. Our troops don't have to fight them. Okay? Oh, what's up, Ninja? How you doing? So we're being told, like, oh, they're going to come into Poland. They're going to go into NATO countries. We'll have to fight them. Wasn't it... Who was it? Kirby. Didn't he say, like, 2 weeks ago? Wasn't there audio of him was like, well, And everyone was like, oh, they're threatening us. They're saying if we don't pass the aid package, then we'll send troops. And the defense was... The official defense was... That's not what he's saying. He's saying if we don't send aid, then Russia could expand, which will require the United States to fight. Yeah, the best money we've ever spent. I've heard stuff like that, yeah. We'll talk about that neighbor guy. It was tough to put that in the title of the video. The guy who self-immolated. I didn't know how the TOS would be friendly. The algorithm probably don't like that term. So that's... In my context of talking to Dylan, even over a year ago, that's exactly what I was getting at, which was this double narrative of, don't worry, Russia's already... Because the argument was, this is an unwinnable war for Ukraine. This is what someone would say that's critical of sending money to Ukraine. It's unwinnable, so we're just throwing money away, and it'll cost the lives of Ukrainians, so why don't we try to have a peaceful resolution now? Because Ukraine's not going to win. And they say, no, Russia's already lost. Ukraine's dominating. Okay, then why send the money? No, if we don't send the money, then Ukraine will be devastated. and Russia will storm right through them. And it seemed to be contradictory. So that's the context in which I bring this up. And both Dylan and Destiny in the panel we're on about a year ago say, oh, they're a paper tiger. They can only get into Moldova. They'll never take Kiev. Okay. Then I talked to Dylan Thursday, and we're talking about Gonzalo Lira, and he starts, I say we shouldn't send aid. Now, I was against sending the money anyways, but after an American, for being a political dissident, was killed, we should stop sending that money until Ukraine answers for it. And he starts saying, we can't not say, it's ridiculous to not send this money, in Ukraine, they could take over all of Ukraine if we don't send this money. And I'm like, whoa, that seems to be different than what you said 12 months ago. 12 months ago, you said they won't be able to get Kiev. They won't be able to get into Poland or any other NATO country. Now you're saying they can get into NATO countries like Estonia, Lithuania, I think Bulgaria. What changed? And he was like, we'll go back and look at the tape. And, then the video evidence was put up on X by Surian, who's a friend of the show. And Danabo, who's the editor and sort of producer for Dylan, like really, really took umbrage at this and said it was false. And when I said, no, I think it was accurate, he said that I was either stupid or lying, and he knew I wasn't stupid, and he expected more from me and was very upset. Okay? So I came on to discuss it briefly Friday night, and Danabo jumped on the Discord, and you could see that he was very upset and felt like he was going to... And then we went through the video, and he basically had to concede that I was correct in my interpretation. But it just goes to show, I mean, maybe I'm wrong in that I try to separate. I could even be very antagonistic towards... I guess I shouldn't be in a high horse. I call people bad faith all the time. But I guess I think I'm right about it. I don't know. But it was a weird situation. Anyways, the reason I bring it up is there's a lot of Ukraine news today, right? A lot came out. And, we had a New York Times story. Now, granted, I only saw the highlights of it because it's, for whatever reason on my phone, it was behind a paywall. I don't know if I used up my maximum amount of free New York Times articles. But this New York Times article, it talks about how, basically the United States was helping with like 10 bases or so in Ukraine. It's interesting. Then we had one of Ukraine's intel people came out and said Navalny wasn't killed. He died of a blood clot. How can that be? People were definitive. They were declarative. He was murdered. How can that be? Then we had news that Tucker Carlson, supposedly, while he was in Russia, that the Ukrainian government paid an assassin $4,000 in a ploy that didn't work out. Yeah, I know. I don't know if I could use it on my phone, but I have used Archive IS before, yeah. And then, lastly, bizarrely, you had Zelensky announcing that only 31,000 Ukrainians have died, which seems to be an outrageous lowball of the number. So I thought we would hit these topics. Let's start with the Tucker Carlson thing. Now, let's start with under the assumption that this is a true story, which we often do when I'm talking about something. If this was a true story, if somehow they're able to prove that someone in Zelensky's government put a hit out on Tucker Carlson, can everyone agree that that's it? That should be completely the end of any support of the United States financially to Ukraine. Like, that's it. You're literally trying to assassinate a U.S. journalist in a different country. That should be it, right? That would make the Zelensky regime as bad as Putin, allegedly, with assassination of journalists. Why would they do it? Well, two reasons. One, maybe they thought Tucker was moving the needle in the United States against Ukraine. And so it would be better to have him out of the picture, and they would be able to blame Russia. And secondly, tangentially attached to that is maybe they thought that the Biden administration and people in the intel community would say, okay, we'll go along with that and blame Russia too. I mean, Tucker's accused them, and it seems he's provided evidence at this point that some of his communications have been hoovered up by U.S. intel community. So there would be motive. But let's have a huge but here. I have difficulty believing this story. Don't fall into the trap of thinking just because one side is propagandizing that the other side isn't. They both are. I do have a huge butt. To me, if I'm completely agnostic on it, I would have to say a claim like this warrants an incredible amount of evidence, and I don't see how we would ever get that. Like, if this was theoretically true, how would you ever prove it? Like, what are they going to... Okay, this guy says it. Okay. You don't think Russia could make this guy say whatever they want? I mean, you would be talking about potential wire transfers from people in Ukrainian government to this guy, or communications that couldn't be faked. Maybe. But I'm very skeptical. It seems like it would behoove Russia to also... Thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate it. It seems like it would behoove Russia to also claim that Ukraine tried to do this. So, I am moving forward on this story saying, interesting if true, but I don't see any proof that it's true. Maybe there will be more developments. I'm skeptical. I think this is a story that we won't hear much more about. That's my feeling on it. And so I don't have much to say. If it was true, if I somehow could definitively see that this was true, it is an enormous story. And like I said, I started off, if it's true, that would mean I don't see how anyone in the United States could credibly suggest sending aid to Ukraine at this point. At least not while Zelensky was in power. He would have to step down and probably be punished by the American justice system or American intel system for that. Or whoever ordered it within his government. But I don't believe it's true. Does anyone have any commentary? Anyone disagree with me? I know I get called a conspiracy theorist, but I try to deal with what I can see proof of, or what I can see evidence of that makes it the most likely scenario. It certainly wouldn't be the first time the CIA tried to kill a journalist. Certainly. So we'll move on from that story. That was weird story one that just came out today with Ukraine. So it's strange. Number two is Zelensky did not look good in this interview. He's done a couple interviews, so they're all running together. But the one I saw, he looks very much like a man who, let's just say, is on some heavy supplements. Now, you could say, hey man, can you blame him? They're in a war for his country. His countrymen are dying. Yeah, but still, you have to control yourself when you're going to an international media, I would say. Maybe he's just sick. Maybe he just has strange mannerisms that I haven't seen in previous interviews with him. I don't know, but it didn't look visually didn't look particularly good. And the claim that stunned me was this claim of, only 31,000 Ukrainians have died. Now, let's be clear. I thought that, even though I like Tucker, I certainly don't agree with everything Tucker does. Tucker did release these supposed leaks that showed the actual amount of soldiers that had died as far as U.S. intelligence has found out. And they were definitely photoshopped how many Ukrainians had died versus Russians. Like, it had it like there were way more Ukrainians killed than Russians. I truly believe that there were probably more Russians killed than Ukrainians. For two reasons. I think with the United States and the Western weapons that are sending there, that makes it probably at least as likely. And generally speaking, normally an aggressor has more casualties than a defender. That's normally how these things play out. Now, obviously, that's not always true. If there is a military of vastly superior and overwhelming numbers and technology and training, then yes. So, for example, the United States in the Iraq War, it's a different situation. That's not what we're seeing here, though. They're sort of equally matched on a battle-to-battle front. Maybe not the entire military, but on the battlefronts that we see. And so, to me, I'm very skeptical of anyone that was trying to claim more Ukrainians died than Russians. It didn't make sense to me. However, I have to tell you, the reason I don't dive into a lot of these specifics is I'm admitting to you that I don't know anything about this. I know enough to know both sides are going to propagandize to me. That's what I know. And I know that the majority of people that are speaking declaratively, saying, I'm an expert, I know what's going on, are also full of shit. They probably know slightly more than me, if that. And everyone throws around, oh, this is it. This is what happened here, and this is what will happen next. And how many times have we, initial predictions where Russia was going to run right through, that turned out not to be true. How many times have we heard that the tide had turned, Ukraine was now winning, and that turned out not to be the case. So certainly, that could be true, Domsky. That could be true. Once the counteroffensives, that Ukraine lost more people during the counteroffensive. That could absolutely be true. All I'm saying is those numbers that were released by Tucker, even when they came out, I'll admit, I retweeted it, and then I started to look into it and was like, And then it was an obvious Photoshop. What's up, Jojo? How you doing? It was an obvious Photoshop. That deserves criticism. As a journalist or as a pundit to release it, does. But it's equally bad, if not worse. Here's what makes this situation so bad. Can I blame Zelensky for pushing propaganda? No, I don't. Let me give you an example. I thought it was absurd. This is going to seem like completely non-connected, but to me it's connected. You remember when COVID started and everyone was there was all this criticism of Trump because he was like, it'll be over soon and we'll get a vaccine or we'll get some treatment. You remember the whole drink bleach stuff? He didn't say drink bleach. But what he was doing there was he's up on stage and he had just talked to some doctors about UV light and injecting UV light as a disinfectant in. And he's just riffing. And people were like, one of the criticisms of Trump that you hear from Democrats all the time is like, oh, he was downplaying it. And I was like, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is he was trying to put forth a hopeful and optimistic message for the country. For example, if he came in and said, you're all going to die. And I was like, imagine being in a foxhole with a commander that's like, it doesn't look good, boys. Probably it. I'm sure that's been said, but I'm guessing that most military men would tell you, never give up. We still can win this. Do they know when military people are saying that stuff that they're most likely full of it? Sure. But can you blame them? So I don't blame Zelensky. He needs to keep the morale of his fighting people and his country up. And he also needs the Western world to think that this isn't a losing cause. So you might say, I hate Zelensky, he's corrupt, he's taking all this money. All of that aside, forget all of that. Just in a pure theorizing what you would want a leader to do in wartime, I don't condemn Zelensky or criticize him for putting out propaganda. Good. I'm glad, Jojo. I'm glad to hear that. What strikes me, though, is why would you put out such obvious garbage propaganda? That's what blows my mind. Unless I'm reading this situation, I mean, is there anyone in the world that believes Ukraine's only lost 31,000 people? I can't remember the exact numbers that Dylan was telling me, but Dylan was saying, he's over there, and he was saying there were more Russians that died than Ukrainians. But I think his numbers were like, for every one Ukrainian, like 3 or 4 Russians had died. And he's saying the amount of Russian casualties is huge. So if that's true, then it's going to be way more than 30,000. Right? I mean, none of it makes sense. They're talking about drafting different... If they've only lost 31,000 people, why all of a sudden are they changing who they draft and rounding people up? It doesn't make sense. And I don't understand why, if you're Zelensky, even if you're going to lowball the number, why wouldn't you lowball it to something a little more believable? Like 100,000. Or 80,000. 30,000? Maybe I'm completely wrong, but it's laughable. And again, I'm admitting, I suppose it's in the realm of possibility. Oh my gosh, no one on YouTube liked the stream? There's a word for you. Imaginarium, do the Russians say more Russians have died than Ukrainians? They were saying 100,000. That's what I thought I was hearing. Over 100,000 on each side. So I just don't get it. I would say strategic. Again, I'm not like morally offended that Zelensky said this. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like strategically it's a mistake. Because you don't, like, imagine he came out and was like, we've only had 10 people die. Everyone understands why that would be dumb, right? Because everyone would be like, wait, what? 10? That's all you've had, 10 people die. And people would be like, I don't think I trust a damn word this guy's saying. Well, 30,000's not as ridiculous as 10, but it's ridiculous. And if you can understand why it would be bad for him to say 10 because it would make people distrusting of him, I think saying 30,000, clearly not as bad as saying 10, but it's in that same vein as you have to pick a number that's reasonable. Oh, thanks, Go Rams. Now you made me look like an idiot. Yeah, I don't believe that at all, Imaginarium. So, I don't know. It was odd. Again, I don't like Zelensky. I don't think we should be sending money to Ukraine. But I'm trying to operate outside the scope of that and look at the situation. If I did want to send money, and I said Zelensky's a great leader, and I think I would be raising my eyebrow like, come on, dude, keep it a little more believable than that. But that's about all I have on that story. Thank you so much, Alice in Wonderland. I appreciate it. The sub. The New York Times story is very interesting. Now, I have not read the entire story. I have read, because it was behind a paywall for me, but I've read snippets of it. And it does seem to suggest that after a certain period of time, I believe in 2014, once we saw Poroshenko come in, that the United States basically in secret helped work on these military bases in Ukraine. Now, I've long since said that even though I don't think Russia should have invaded, that the United States didn't help the situation and NATO didn't help the situation. They sort of kept poking the bear. And then the bear bit back and everyone went, uh-oh, oh boy. Now, before people jump on me and say, oh, so you're saying Russia and Putin don't have any blame. That's not what I'm saying. It's very similar to what Ron Paul said after 9/11, where everyone wanted to, in the time of freedom fries and make every Middle Eastern country a parking lot because of 9/11, because people lost their damn minds, the same type of people that were saying that and wanted us to go to Iraq and Afghanistan and drop big bombs and this and that and the other, they were criticizing Ron Paul because they said that what Ron Paul was saying was the United States deserved it. And that is not what Ron Paul was saying. Or Al-Qaeda is not to blame, or Islamic terrorists not. That's not what he was saying. Ron Paul was basically making, and I believe he himself used this analogy, if you put your foot into a den of vipers, you're going to get bit. That doesn't mean you don't blame the viper. You know? Yeah, Crucible Clips, I agree with you. There's been a lot of people that have allegedly fled Ukraine. I don't believe anything. And let me be clear. There is a truthful number. The truth exists. And I'm sure someone said it. But the problem is both sides, understand this, it's a war. Both sides are going to be putting propaganda. Imagine if you can go back to like the Civil War, or even better, the Revolutionary War, right? And so you have the Brits fighting the colonists. You had an ocean in between them. What the Brits were probably hearing back home probably did not match what was going on in the actual war. And even in the States here, or the colonies at the time, you're not at the battlefield. You don't have the internet. No one's taking live video. So you're listening through, and it's probably propaganda you're getting. The difference now is we have access to not just our propaganda, but the propaganda of every other country in the world. So people make a mistake in saying, like, I recognize the U.S. government propaganda. I recognize Ukraine's propaganda. Therefore, Russia must be telling the truth. No! They also are propagandizing to you. This influencer that's got a Ukraine flag, I recognize that he's propagandizing. So this guy over here that's saying Russia's the good guy, he must not be propaganda. No, that's not true. And I have to be honest with you. I work 80-something hours a week, usually. I have a family. I think there are massive problems in this country. I don't have time to sift hours and hours and hours to try to get to the bottom of the bullshit when it comes to either the Ukraine war or the Israel-Palestine conflict. I know enough to know that I'm ignorant of the situation and that all sides on both Israel-Palestine and this have an agenda to try to get me to join their side. And it might seem like a cop-out, but seeing as the massive problems we have back home, my answer is simple. We shouldn't be involved. That's it. In either conflict. Done. We have enough problems back home. I don't mind people that are very interested in trying to... But look at the mistakes people made. The ghost of Kiev. Remember the woman with the sunflower seeds dropping them for the spilled Russians that would be... I can't... Not a week goes by that I don't see footage out of Ukraine, Russia, that you don't then later see a community note or someone commenting, this is from 2014. Oh, look, here's the Ukraine government. They're tying up Russian-speaking people on telephone poles, and it'll be like, this is from Bulgaria in 2008. Well, let's be clear. I don't get paid 80 hours. So let me explain why I say 80 hours a week. I get to clock out, but I have to stay here, right? So let's say I come in Sunday at 3, which I did this week. I'm here till Monday at 3, that's 24. Tuesday at 3, that's 48. Wednesday at 3, that's 72. And then I'll leave Thursday at 2. So what's that? That'll be 90-something hours. So, but I don't get paid for my sleep shifts, my night shifts. So that's my feelings on that propaganda. Yeah, the propaganda rush, I'm sure it's terrible. You can see it. Now, well, let me just put it this way. If you have it, just to clarify, there's 162 hours in a week, right? We only have 2 people that work at my home healthcare house. That means we each literally work half the week plus 1 hour. Because you have to do, or plus 2 hours, you have to do a crossover. So that's, on an average week, I work 83, I'm away from my house at work 83 hours. Then most of the time I have to drive to my office to drop receipts off, which is about an hour and a half to a 2 hour drive. There and back. So that's another 4 hours. And then usually once a month I have 5 or 6 trainings I have to do when I'm at home. So you can see it averages out that I'm doing work-related stuff. Even if my paycheck won't say it, at least 90 hours a week usually is what it averages out to. It's going good. But that's because I was a drunk in college, so it's my fault. And it beats my wife having... I'm lucky to have a job where I could work so much overtime, to be honest, and a job that I actually really like. Now, it's not 80 hours for 40 hours of pay. Usually my paycheck's 75 hours a week that I get paid. So about 35 hours overtime. But I'm lucky because it allowed my wife to quit her job, taking the extra overtime, so that she could stay at home with my son. Just one. So the style... We're getting off on a tangent here, but the style that we do is we basically... you had all these people in like facilities, psychiatric facilities, and they tried to roll that back. And so a lot of people, depending on the severity of their diagnosis, they found that having more personal care in their own home worked better. So what ends up happening is a company will purchase a house or rent a home for an individual, and then instead of that individual being in a nursing home type setting where they're with a bunch of other people and there's a handful of nurses, instead what it is they live in their own homes and then they have live-in staff, and I'm one of the live-in staff. And it actually, I could say, there's a lot of, I could spend a lot of time talking about this. There's a lot of money and government money that goes into this sort of stuff, and there's a lot of waste. But I do think that the assisted living, I think that the program has been tremendous for the right type of person. Because the problem is with something like a mental disability or autism or a bunch of other, developmental disabilities, it used to be a one-size-fits-all treatment. And sadly, being in a lot of these facilities around here, there was one called Polk. And actually, Nancy Reagan visited it when Reagan was in office and was unimpressed with what was going on at Polk. Some horror stories, But it's like a prison. So if you're someone and you're not a violent person, but you have autism and they put you in there, there are people that are incredibly violent. And now you're in there fighting for your life every day. And maybe for every 50 patients, there's 5 staff. And so they're not going to be able to find... And it's not like you're in solitary. You're in communal living and sharing rooms with people. And there's a lot of terrible stories of violence. And so what would you do in that situation? You'd probably defend yourself. You'd probably have to get violent. And it's similar to prison, where you hear people that go in that aren't necessarily violent people, and they have no choice but to become violent because of the environment when they're in there. So a lot of people you'll see have records where it's like, they've been arrested, the cops had to come when they were in the facility, and their record of violence in the facility is immense. And then you meet people and they're like, how could this person have been that same person on that 20 years ago was in this facility and was incredibly violent? Well, they're fighting for their lives. My brother, Jojo there, he knows. He did the same line of work as me, and my other brother, Go Rams, also does this line of work. So, I mean, it's incredible. And sometimes there's bad stuff that can happen, don't get me wrong. But in general, the idea of trying to give people maximum amounts of freedom and maximum amount of choice in their life, and then just assisting them with that, I think is it's a really great thing. I really do enjoy it. And, yeah, it's the first job I've had in my life where I felt like I'm actually making a meaningful difference in people's lives. Where it's, I've worked tough jobs. Oh, we'll talk about that too, Hassan. I've worked tough jobs, Working in Burger King was one of the hardest jobs I ever had. Not because it's physically laborious, but because you wouldn't believe it wasn't that hard for me because I don't give a shit, I guess. And I would yell back at people and get rode up and stuff. But, like, some of the people that worked up front, I mean, it'd be brutal. These customers would come through and just treat them like garbage, and you have to deal with it over and over and over all day. That's tough. Any sort of where you're dealing with customers like that, anybody who works a register at any store, grocery store, Walmart, fast food, my hat's off to you. That's not easy work. How autistic are they? It's an interesting one. It runs the gambit. Most of the people, I'll put it this way, most of the people in my company would be unable to go about their day-to-day life without someone there 24/7. So service industry. So, I worked at a Christmas tree farm, trimming mostly, but sometimes dragging or digging trees. That's tough. That's tough work for like $6 an hour. That was when I was like 15 or 16. Let's see, what else did I do? I was assistant debate coach. That wasn't that tough, to be honest. Deal with a bunch of ridiculous lefties, but that was a pretty easy job. I worked on a small hobby farm. I did that for a while, and that would just be like anything from feeding animals to shoveling manure to digging to get a little stream, digging a big stream. I worked at a real estate place, basically just being, I don't know what you would call it, the gopher. When I was there, I scanned documents into a program was my primary job, but I ended up doing things like painting fences and mowing the yard, and I worked with all ladies, so my job would usually be, anytime any of the ladies would ask me to do any ridiculous request, I'd be like, I don't care. Anything was better than staring at the computer the whole time, I thought. So, go pick us up lunch, can you take my car to the car wash? Sure. And they thought they're like, wow, I was like, to me, I'm getting paid the same hourly. What do I care? But yeah, bartending. Yeah, bartending was so I've done a lot of jobs, and I liked a lot of them, but to actually like make a difference in someone's life, I think this is, I'll tell you the story about the best day of work I've had. I have to be vague because there's privacy concerns. But the one job, I won't say what company or what year or anything like that, but I'd worked with some of the same individuals for quite a bit of time. And part of it was monthly trips to get certain types of medication. So you'd have to go to a doctor's office to, whether it be injections and things of that nature, that I'm not qualified to do. So I can't give an injection. I'm not qualified for that. So anything like that, if you're worrying about getting into this field and you're like, well, I'm not comfortable jabbing someone with a needle or something, trust me, most of the time it's not the case. Most of the time you'll be trained to give medication like pills or, you could be trained to give insulin or something like that. But most serious medications that would require injection, you'd probably go to a doctor's office. And so sometimes people are prescribed medications that it's time-based, like monthly, you have to go to the doctor's office. So we would go to a doctor's office, and we had one particular nurse who was an older lady, and she used to have a different job. She used to be the nurse at one of the big facilities. And she happened to, one of the gentlemen that I worked for, know him from one of those facilities years and years ago. And we went there, and she mentioned it to me. Very cordial, very, for having to get an injection. I'm kind of a wimp. I don't like getting shots. Unfortunately, it's a sad reality. A lot of people that are in this sort of care, they have to get a lot of serious medications, and that might mean a lot of blood work or a lot of injections. And it's, so most of them are used to it. They've been doing it for years, and they handle it way better than I would, getting that many injections. But we went in one day, and it was this woman's last day. She was retiring. I think she was 70. And she pulled me aside and told me, she's like, can I tell you something real quick? And I said, sure. And she said, when I first met the person you're with today, I was afraid to be in a room with them. That's how violent the situation was. And she's like, now I look forward to you guys coming every month. And that, to me, that was the highlight of me doing this, where I realized, however small it is, that I had a meaningful enough impact in someone's life that it was noticed. And that, I think that it speaks for itself, the quality of life of, having people in a community being afraid of you versus you literally being their first favorite person to be around. It's because that particular person made incredible strides, and it's 99% because they're an amazing person. But just to have be a little part of that was it's pretty incredible. That was my favorite day of work ever. I've never had a day of work like that bartending or coaching debate. I had good days coaching debate, but it's a game, Would I stream full time as a source of income? Would that be more stressful than my current job? No, I don't think so. What I always say about this line of work, and you know this, Go Rams, what I always say about my line of work is 95% of the time you're like, I can't believe I get paid to do this because it's great. And then 5% of the time you're like, man, I can't believe this is all I get paid to do this. Because sometimes if things go sideways, it could go real sideways. And you might have situations where you're dealing with law enforcement or you're dealing with angry parents, and easily some of the most stressful moments of my life have been through this job. Now, on an average day, if I'm we're going to a Pittsburgh Pirates game and then we're going to stop off at, Steak and Shake. That's not a stressful day at all. Maybe my dumbass driving around the city is a little stressful, but that's a very unstressful day. Most of my days at work are not very stressful, but most of my streaming's not stressful either. So I don't know how I would evaluate that. But hypothetically, if you could say, if you at your work were guaranteed to always have the best day, would that be less stressful than streaming? Probably not still. Streaming shouldn't be that I mean, again, it's hard to evaluate, I guess, because, I would look at, for me, I don't think I would ever get out of streaming. I know we'll go back to the Ukraine stuff. We're kind of getting into the Hassan discourse, right? Where Hassan, I know he's saying it was taken out of context, but he seemed to suggest that streaming 8 hours is more stressful or more difficult than actually having a 9-to-5 type job. I looked at the greater context, and what he said was something like, it drains your social battery more. So I think what he's saying is, if you dig ditches from 9 to 5, you can go home, get showered up, and go hang out with friends. But if you stream 9 to 5, then you don't want to talk to people. I disagree with that as well. I think that's stupid. Hassan has no right, if you could pick, it's just another, lefties do this all the time, right? Some of the most privileged people in the world will be lefties that just complain about how everyone else is more privileged than them. Did I catch Pisco last night? No. I busy working. But let's say I started streaming full time. I can't guarantee that I would always be happy about it. There are times when I felt like I had to come on to stream that I didn't feel like it because I made a commitment. And I told my audience, yeah, I'll be there at 8 o'clock. And then at 7 o'clock, friends come over. And you're like, shit, I'd rather hang out with my friends than stream tonight. But particularly, my rule of thumb is, in particular, if I've made a commitment to someone else, like if I'm supposed to do a debate, if I'm supposed to moderate a debate, I try, unless an emergency comes up, to always fulfill that. Because I know at that point, it's not just me that I'm letting down, but it's whoever. That's why, doing this line of work, sometimes things come up. So, I have to stay here Wednesday night, but I'll still do the debate Wednesday. I can get it done. No excuses. So, it is what it is. But for me, streaming is not stressful at all. I mean, at all. And I understand that it could be stressful for some people. But then why are you streaming? Maybe you're streaming because you're trying to overcome a phobia. For example, I did debate in college. I debated in front of auditoriums full of people. I could walk in front of a group of 10,000 people tomorrow and give a speech. And I wouldn't have that much anxiety about it. I just wouldn't. It's just what I'm used to. If you asked me to dance in front of people, like in my wedding I had to dance, that made me nervous. That was a little stressful, but I got over it. So for me, the idea of would it be more stressful? No. Would I dislike it more? Maybe. I don't think if I ever quit streaming, it'll be because of stress. It'll probably be because I'm bored with it or it feels like a chore. But I don't think about stress would be part of it. Yeah, and you have to understand, right? Like, the arrogance, even if you're qualifying what you said, there is no debate, right? To me, I understand how lucky I am. When I have so many friends and family, like my brother there. My brother does like roofing and he goes with crews and works on like mobile houses and stuff like that, siding, roofing. That shit sucks. That's the type of stuff you get home and you're physically exhausted and your back's breaking down by the time you're 50. I've seen that. That's my town, baby. That's everyone I know. And for me, it's like, you know, I mean, I watch these guys that I'm so soft. I understand. I'm so soft. Like, I'll watch these guys hunched over, getting off a day of work. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got to go, you know, change oil or something. There they are, just like that. Whatever. It doesn't matter how injured they are. They're out there, you know. And so obviously this is just a hobby for me. It's not my career, but I do make a small amount of money with it. And I am incredibly grateful. You know, the other thing is, maybe it's more stressful if you're involved in the drama shit more. I mean, I guess I've experienced some stress in that, you know, people trying to get me canceled, people doxing me, people hacking my accounts and shit like that. That's stressful. I mean, eventually I'm going to do Tim Pool's show. It looks like it got pushed back. I was going to wait until the end of the show. It's supposed to be March 1st, but it looks now like it's going to be March 15th or sometime in early April. Hopefully March 15th, I'm hoping. But I guess they're having scheduling conflicts or something, so yeah, it's a bummer. So that news just came today, earlier today. So I don't know. It is what it is. But anyways, you know, I'm acutely aware that if my channel would blow up, that means that I'm going to get more harassment. But what are you going to do? Try to not be successful, you know? So you just roll with it. You do the best you can. But, yeah. So, yeah, that's it. We'll see. Maybe someday I'll be a full-time streamer. Yeah, right. It might be stressful if you have pornographic material on your computer and you're afraid, you're always stressing out that when you hit this, you know, you get a different scene like that all of a sudden people will see it. I avert that problem by not having pornographic material on my devices, so hopefully that's a pretty good fix for that. Anyways, back to this New York Times story. So I have to delve into it more, but if you remember, way back to like when I was debating I'm Really Important, and we talked about not necessarily military labs, but we talked about these biolabs. And I'd done a little research at the time, and basically the story is this. Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, and then once the Soviet Union collapses, they're sort of left in this sort of limbo. And they had facilities from the Soviet Union that were biolabs there that had, according to the United States government, dangerous materials. So around 2003 or 2004, the United States decides to start working with these labs to dispose of this dangerous material. But we're still there. We were unable to dispose of it in 20 years? And so I made the comment, was like, well, you could see from Russia's perspective how this would upset you, particular after COVID. Because Russia's perspective is probably that COVID is a bioweapon, or released, if not a weapon, released from a lab. Maybe it was being studied as a treatment and it released from a lab. Right? And you might say, what's that have to do with the United States? It was China. Well, two things. One, even if it had nothing to do with the United States, if it's true that this came out of a Wuhan lab, it illustrates how unsafe this could be. And you might want to have a say in it if it was 20 miles off your border or 50 miles off your border. And you'll remember me debating I'm Really Important, saying, what would the United States do if China had a biolab in Mexico or Canada, 50 miles away from our border? Do you think the United States would want to see what was there? Do you think they'd be opposed to that? Do you think it would be acceptable if China said, no, you can't see, but trust us. Nothing there to be worried about. Particularly when the stated reason that the United States is there is there are dangerous biological agents from the Soviet Union era there. Okay. Am I still on for a 3v1 with the Krasenstein? Is that what you're talking about? I'm not quite sure what you're referencing. I would do that. I don't think it'll be the Krasensteins. I think that it looks as if their our schedules aren't going to coincide in a way that would, on the days that I would be available, that they would be available. But we'll see. Hopefully I get news. In fact, checking here. One second. This is entertaining, isn't it? Nope, no message yet. So. March 1st. Now, it looks like... oh, yeah, I mean... You're saying, would I debate someone else 3v1 on March 1st since the temple thing fell through until at least the 15th? Sure, I don't give a shit. Doing good, Sheik. Hope you're doing great. Thank you so much. Appreciate the follow, man. Thank you. But the other thing is, the United States funded that Wuhan lab, and the World Health Organization defended it to the hilt. So if you're Russia, and you think that it came from that lab, and then you see all these other labs in Ukraine, wouldn't you be like, hey, wait a minute. And by the way, one of the arguments that people made was like, but it's not weapons. To who? What? Have I ever had a problem with wind ruining my hair? Not in the past decade. As you can see. I always thought that was an interesting point. It's not a weapon. Okay. Now, you could say the literal definition. So, let's say I have a dangerous... I have a dangerous virus here. And you could say that's only a weapon if I intentionally make it so. So, I would have to create it, put it in some form that the intended purpose of it was a weapon. But let's say I create that exact same form, but the purpose isn't a weapon. Let's say the purpose is gain of function, right? Because this is... I don't think I have to tell people this, but just in case you didn't know, right? So gain of function was sort of this idea that like, and this is a layman's explanation of it, that scientists would be like, okay, every year there's a new flu virus and there's new coronaviruses. And so what if one year one comes along and it's stronger than we're used to and our medications won't work against it? That could be devastating. So how could we can't predict how these viruses will change in the wild. We just don't know. But what if we created a super version of it? What if we created the most infectious, deadly flu ever, and then came up with a medication to deal with it? So we create it in a lab, and then we come up with a medication that deals with it. Then when the far less aggressive flu mutates, we'll have a much better foundation with how to deal with that. We'll be ready to go. If we could deal with the super aggressive weaponized version, well then. That's sort of the idea. Is that a weapon? If someone takes Ebola and genetically modifies it in a way with the intent of trying to harm as many people as possible, we'd say that's a weapon. But what if they genetically modify it in that exact same way and say, no, this is just to keep in the lab so that we could come up. Is that a weapon? Well, I guess it depends on your perspective. If you're the allied country, if it's you doing it, you say, no, that's not a weapon. But what if you're the enemy of that country and you're at war with them? You'd be like, yeah, it's a weapon. So would you be happy with that? If you're Russia, would we be happy if Russia was doing that to the United States? Of course not. So this New York Times story, I have to look into this more, but the idea that the United States... And listen, I can't definitively prove a lot because I don't have access to top secret information or anything more than the average person would have, just what you see publicly available. Thank you so much, Randy West, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. No, RD500, it's not worth it, which is why they should outlaw gain of function. But it's obvious that the United States meddled in Ukraine. My guess is it wasn't that they planned everything out like a chess move. Maybe they did. But I don't see evidence of that. My gut feeling says this is what happens. And you can hear Mike Benz talk about a lot of this when he's explaining how our intel agencies use the internet for sort of color revolutions. And so most countries will have people that are upset with the way that the country's being ran. And the worse off economically and rights-wise that a country is, the more likely you will see people that are upset and are blaming the current administration. The question is, can those people coalesce into a movement to ouster the people that are the target of their ire? My guess is that there was a concerted effort in the United States by U.S. intel to facilitate those sorts of groups in places like Ukraine. However, those groups were simultaneously organic. In other words, there was actual people that were actually mad. It's just the United States helped amplify their message, probably through NGOs, send them money, and then direct it to the direction that they wanted. In this case, ousting Yanukovych. Does that mean that Victoria Nuland sat down and was like, now we're sending this guy? Not necessarily. Once the ball's rolling, and you've heard the tape with Victoria Nuland, which people do rightly criticize, is in the context of like, well, not them picking the leader, but making suggestions, but that's how you would do it. Debate destiny on Ukraine and get crushed. Okay. The same Destiny that I just played the audio from the other day that said Russia's a paper tiger. They would never be able to take Kiev. They'll never be able to invade another NATO country. That Destiny? Is that what he's still saying today? Just curious. I have debated Destiny on Ukraine. I did not get crushed. And I would happily do it again now that we're a year on in. Who knows? Maybe Destiny will be on Tim Pool's show with me. And maybe we could talk about Ukraine there. But I can't prove. I don't have access to internal documentation. We have a free press that doesn't give a shit. They're not a press. They're literally just propagandists. So they're not going to delve into it. Now, having said all of this, if it was up to me and I could snap my fingers, Thanos style, Russia would leave Ukraine now. Today. I don't particularly like Zelensky. I think that a lot needs to be done with his administration that's been corrupt in various ways, detaining an American by the name of Gonzalo Lira, for example. No, don't kick the trolls. No, not at all. Absolutely have the right to tell me that they think Destiny would crush me. I don't mind at all. But the most interesting part of this New York Times story is why? Why did they release this today? And then that goes in with the other story. Why are they announcing that Navalny, it looks like he died of a blood clot? He crushed that kid, what's his name, on Fresh and Fit, and he hung out with Nick Fuente. What does that have to do with me? I saw people were putting, did you see Destiny on Piers Morgan with, who was it? Laura Loomer? Is that who it was? Go watch my debates with Destiny. You might not think that I crush Destiny. I think I do very well against him. The majority of the time I talk to him. No, I don't. Tommy Lauren, that's who wants it. No, I don't want Roman King. Of course not. It's all right to disagree with me. God, yeah. A lot of people that join into the debate space, particularly bigger names, I think what you're seeing now is like bigger names that weren't necessarily like debate bro type people, you know, that are now jumping into a space. I think Ben Shapiro did remarkably well against Destiny. I think Destiny took a big L easily in that debate. The Glenn Greenwald debate, one-on-one, I did not see, I'll be honest. But my gut says, based on the reaction, that Destiny probably lost the majority of that debate, though I can't say that. When Destiny and the Krasensteins debated Alex Jones and Glenn Greenwald and Darren Beatty, that was a clear victory for Destiny and the Krasensteins. But he knows. Destiny knows debating me is much more difficult than debating most of these people. But nonetheless. Phone's blowing up, but nothing important. What are we looking at? Anyways, where are all... Can people... Has anyone seen me talking about Navalny and Gonzalo Lira? I've been talking about it for a week or so now. Right? Probably 2 weeks. What did I say? I said, even when I talked to Dylan Burns, I said, the people that are saying Navalny have been murdered, either one, they're just full of shit. Because they haven't seen an autopsy. They don't know. They might say, Russia's the type of place that would do that. They would murder him. And they tried to poison him before. But none of that proves that they murdered him now. None of it. And so when they were saying, my God, this is the end of the line, they murdered Navalny. Bullshit. You have no proof of that. None. Or, and I was quite generous with this take, I said, I am willing to allow and say it's within bounds to me for people to say Russia murdered him under this logic. They illegally detained him and imprisoned him as a political prisoner. And so if you do that indefinitely and someone's in poor health and they die, you could say that they murdered them. That's what I said. Oh, no, people said. No, there's a difference. Navalny was murdered. He was murdered. Really? You've seen proof? We know. Where are they today? Because the problem is if they say, well, he was imprisoned for political disagreements and differences. And maybe he was kept in not the best facilities. And that led to his health deteriorating. That would be murder. They can't say that. Because then they have to answer for Gonzalo Lira. He died, Jojo. They're saying it was a blood clot. Now let's be clear. They could come out later and say that it was a blood clot caused by some sort of injection. Right? The story could change. And certainly it seems that there would be a propaganda reason for Ukraine or the United States for that story to change. But what it illustrates is all of the people that spoke up and said it was a murder, implying that this was an intentional act of murder, didn't know. They don't know. Yeah, Erudite, I was unimpressed with debating her. That's true. Yeah, like a vaccine. But why do these stories come out? It's interesting. You know, I would have said after a week or two of the Israeli-Palestine thing that it looked like Ukraine was now, he's the old child, first child. New kid comes along and they get all the attention. But of course they're resuscitating Russiagate 2.0, which means Ukraine's prime real estate, right? Incidentally, you can go over Reddit and all, Dylan Burns' video the other day that we did, go to it on YouTube, and about the Gonzalo Lira. It is insane how maniacal so many of these people on the left are. It's absolutely insane. They are giddy at the death of Gonzalo Lira. Absolutely giddy. And it is amazing to watch. I don't know if it's bad faith, if it's ignorance, if it's cognitive dissonance. The number one comment that I see from people that are, who gives a shit about Gonzalo Lira, or he got what he deserved, is he should have known better. He shouldn't have broke the laws of another country. It doesn't matter if he's an American. Now do Brittany Griner. Oh wait, that was different? You think for a second, for example, if Hunter Biden goes to Russia, or let's not even use Hunter Biden, right? Let's say, Malia Obama goes wherever, Denmark, and she's smoking weed, and they're like, sorry, that's 10 years in prison. Whatever country. Could even be an allied country. Do you think that the United States government would be like, hey, you broke the law? Do you think that's what the average lefty would do? We know they wouldn't. We saw what they did. They'll just memory hold the Brittany Griner thing. But he was a bad person. Okay, people say that about Navalny. They say he was a far-right nationalist who hated Muslims. Does that mean he deserved it? And it's like, people don't even listen. Like, when I debated Dylan, like, you read the comment section, saying that Gonzalo Lira was a journalist. Show me one saying that. In fact, I said the opposite. I said, his status as a journalist is completely irrelevant. His status in, was he a good person or a bad person? Completely irrelevant. That's exactly true, the True Land with Andrew Tate. They were like, break the law in their country. That's exactly right. Selective. And I said this on X when I was arguing with people. They're laying the groundwork for political jailings in this country, even worse than January 6th. There is no doubt in my mind that there are a lot of people with Ukrainian flags in their bios that would want someone like me locked up for criticizing sending aid to Ukraine. There is no doubt. And at the same time, would want violent criminals released. The Merchant of Death, is what they called that guy, RD500. And I can't stress this enough. And even Dylan had to concede this. They rearrested Gonzalo Lira trying to flee the country. How doesn't that solve the problem? If the problem is you can't be in our country saying this shit, and he's trying to flee, let him go. And Dylan Burns spilled the beans. He said, because they wanted to make an example out of him. An American. Not because he was working with Russia as a spy. That's not what the indictment said. It was because he denied Russian war crimes and insulted Ukrainian troops. That was his crime. The ruthlessness that these people on the left have, it is incredible. U.S. seems to do the same. Plenty of deaths at ICE detention centers. Blips on the news, then everyone forgets. I don't get the comparison. The reason, of course, nationals from all sorts of countries get arrested in all sorts of countries and then could die in jail. The reason that this is unique is that this was for a political dissident. His crime was insulting insulting Ukrainian troops, and because he was American. And you could say, but why is that different? It's different because the government of America is supposed to look out for Americans. If that means that someone breaks a drug law in Russia and we give up the Merchant of Death, who, not in my words, but in the words of the United States and the Biden administration, was responsible for countless numbers of deaths, and would be a danger if released and could possibly lead to more deaths if released, but it was worth giving him up to get Brittany Griner. That was this administration, the Biden administration. That was their stance. So why wasn't an effort made to bring back an American for exercising what we call free speech, which is legal in this country? And you could say, well, it's not legal in Ukraine. Fine, but if they're going to detain Americans for it and not give them back, then we should hold them accountable. That's different than people trying to flood our country illegally. Because again, from the perspective of America, I want America looking out for Americans and protecting our border. Now, if someone murders someone in an ICE facility, that's different. That person should be held accountable, even if it was an illegal alien that they murdered. But if they die in custody, it's a completely different situation because, one, they're not Americans, and it matters from the perspective of what the American government should do. And second, they weren't arrested for being political dissidents. He wasn't a political dissident. He was just above. He was arrested for insulting Ukrainian troops. Yeah, say what you want, Drugi. A lot of the left was happy with that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention real quick Ronna McDaniel, no longer the RNC chair. My guess is they'll put someone horrible in her place. The primary job of the RNC chair is fundraising, and so they're going to want someone who is beholden to the big donors. They don't really give a shit about the little donors. They care about the big donors. I would love to see Scott Pressler in that role. But a brief cause for celebration that one of the worst RNC officials in my lifetime has been ousted. I only wish here in the state of Pennsylvania they would get rid of the RNC people here because they're wretched. They lost to John Fetterman, a stroke victim who didn't know where he was and gave probably the worst debate performance of all time. And they lost convincingly and made zero changes. So, goodbye, Ronna. We hardly knew you. Good luck in your next adventure, probably working for a defense contractor or some shit, making millions of dollars. Talking to me, Rowan? No, I've said I didn't think Russia had reason to invade. I understand why they did. I still don't think they're in the right. Let's talk about this guy that lit himself on fire and all of the things around him. It's a difficult topic. I love comedy. I love stand-up comedy. I like dark comedy. Offensive comedy. I like all of that stuff. I don't mind people joking around about people dying. I don't think that makes you a horrible person. But I'm not going to do it. I feel in this situation, it's different. There's like, a really funny joke is, did you ever see Norm Macdonald doing The Daily Show right after Steve Irwin died? And he's doing jokes about the crocodile hunter dying. It's actually really funny. And it's like a week after he died. And you're like, ugh. That's different, I think, than some no-name person lights themselves on fire. To me, it's in a different spirit. A public figure, and you're doing it in a, it's slightly different. And it would be worse if someone lit this guy on fire, right? It'd be worse if a murderer lit someone on fire and you're laughing about it. That's worse. But I guess doing it to himself makes it a little less offensive. Not that I give a shit about the offense of it. I'm just not going to do it. Because, I don't know. I feel bad. I always try to remember that people have families. That guy probably had a family. How are they feeling today? So I feel absolutely terrible for them. I don't know. That's how I feel on the sort of joking about it. Now, if you're sharing the video that was going viral, someone put Scorpion from Mortal Kombat with this fatality, laid him on fire. I don't think it makes you the worst person in the world. I'm not saying that. I don't give a shit. But you know, I'm. That's just not where I'm at. I guess today, maybe some other. It's just, I don't know. For me, the fact that it's not, you know, some well-known person that was in the public eye, you know, and then someone said, Jergy said, yeah, right, Jergy, that it is different, you know, it. But again, I don't mind the offensive joke. I'm not. Please don't take it the wrong way. I don't morally mind the people laughing at Gonzalo Lira dying. I wouldn't do it because that's different. That's someone being forcibly detained and then dying. But let's be honest, there were people that laughed at George Floyd's death. So it is whatever, you know. I'm not here to make large moral proclamations. I was honest when I told Dylan I wouldn't have laughed if it's Dylan. If Dylan is in an area that gets taken over by Russians in Ukraine and he's live streaming and they find him because of that and then arrest him and he dies in prison, I wouldn't laugh. Would I eventually tell jokes about Dylan? Maybe. But not that. But people would. Just like they did with Gonzalo Lira. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily a shitty, immoral person. I guess. Anyways, that's the least interesting thing to say about this, but that's where I'll start. You know, like Drogi said, I guess there is something to be said of someone's conviction level of a political issue, that they're willing to kill themselves for it. That's the only thing positive I have to say about it. I think the fact that people are lionizing this guy as doing something great is absolutely insane. Particularly on a lot of social media spots where there's a lot of young, impressionable people. I think that that's a terrible thing to suggest to people. Now, if, let's just say hypothetically, you're a big left-wing streamer, and you're like, wow, that's so brave, that's amazing what that guy did. And then someone in your audience goes out and repeats that action. Am I going to say you're responsible for that? No. But you should be careful. You should be. This was a really dumb thing. What? First off, if you're going to take a drastic action like that, I'm not saying that there's never been a time and a place. For example, reading the Gulag Archipelago, there were people that hunger struck to the point where they died. They starved themselves to death over months, protesting this treatment. But at that point, there was no other avenue to take. Is there anyone out there, regardless, maybe you're the biggest Palestine supporter in the world and you think Israel is just horrible, right? Is there anyone out there that thinks this is going to move the needle on U.S. policy? Is it even going to move the needle on our discourse? I don't understand it. What is the benefit? And you know what the legacy's going to be, unfortunately, and this is sad, it really is. He's going to be a meme. That's it. You're going to be an internet joke, dude. You lit yourself on fire to be an internet joke. That's what people will remember. You're basically a far less viral version of Harambe. That's it. Yeah, it would be bad optics for that, Jergy. That's certainly true. For Israelis to come out and be like, right, haha, our enemies are killing. That's bad. Have they, furthermore? You sure about that? Have they killed 15,000 children? Maybe. Maybe not. Yeah, right, Crisco. He probably thought he'd be in textbook. He ain't going to be in textbooks. He could be on YouTube. Oh, well, probably not. He'll be on Twitter. He'll be in a lot of Twitter feeds, but no textbook, I don't think. Much like Ukraine, Russia, the numbers that come out of the people that died and the horror stories that you hear from both Israel and Palestine, both sides have an agenda to propagandize. My take on Israel-Palestine is I don't give a shit to delve into the history. I know enough to know that both sides have acted terribly. I'll say something that's going to make me sound like a racist, but I'll say it anyways. To me, it reeks of a conflict of people with a position of authority versus those that don't. So I look at it like Israel-Palestine, I look at it a lot like, imagine that you're in some like Detroit, you know, and there's, maybe that's not a good example now, but what Detroit once was, and you have like insane gang violence. And then you have the police trying to deal with it. And the gang violence is like, they don't even give a shit about optics. They're not pretending to have authority. They don't give a shit. They want your stuff, they'll take it, they'll kill you. They don't care. They'll film it, they'll laugh. Right? And so the police are dealing with it. But let's say the police are corrupt. They're not announcing their shit. They're under the veil of, well, we have the authority to do this. And they're investigating themselves. But they're doing shitty stuff too. They're robbing drug dealers. They're killing their families. That's a lot how I look at this, where it's like, who would you rather live by? Probably the people running Israel's government than I would the people of Hamas. Easily that, right? Because the people in Hamas are just we have faith, we don't give a shit, we have the right to do this, you're the great Satan, we'll do whatever we want, or whatever. But the Israeli government doesn't seem to be on the up and up. It seems like they would slowly encroach and do what they were going to do under the veil of authority. I feel, I don't know, but I feel this is probably true. I feel the Israel with other Western intelligence would probably be able to find leaders of Hamas, particularly those that are outside of the country in places like Qatar. I think they'd be able to find and target them and have much more devastating effects on Hamas than just bombing the general populations that may be Hamas. I think this is a conflict that won't be solved in my lifetime. There might be temporary hiatuses, but this is like a blood feud. Hatfields and McCoys type shit, except generationally and internationally. Hezbollah, right. They're funding Hezbollah, and the Houthis, which are supposedly attacking Israel and the United States' interest. I don't know if there's been a direct tie to Hamas, but I personally think Israel's gone too far. That's what I think. With one big caveat. If I was Israel, I might do the same thing. But that I'm not Israel. I'm an outsider looking in. Do you ever see these, it's horrible. It's a horrible, dark place to go. But have you ever seen, fight videos on X or on Twitter? Have you ever seen this? You'll be scrolling through. There's tons of feeds that do this. And it'll just be, brutal fights. Sometimes it's just, jumping someone who's not fighting. Other times it's two people mutually fighting. I see this shit all the time, right? I do. I don't know if it's just my feed. I don't click on it a lot. But I see it. Sometimes you'll see them where it's man beats his daughter's boyfriend because he beat her. Did he go too far? And you don't know that that's the background story, but assume it is for a second. And you just see some older guy just laying, just crushing some guy. Just crushing him. And you could be like, wow, that's way too far. But if it was your daughter, is it? We as a society could say, look, you have to restrain yourself. You can't do that. But if it's you and your family, you might say, I know this probably isn't the right thing to do. I don't give a shit. And I feel that's a lot of what's going on. I feel that's what's going on. That we as outsiders could say, no, you and I'm not even saying everyone's saying no, but I feel that we as outsiders could say, listen, you have to restrain yourself. You are the more powerful military, Israel. You have to restrain yourself. You can't go ham. You can't just level entire city blocks because you heard that there was some Hamas fighters there. You can't do that. But if I'm that pilot and they killed my daughter, it's different. That doesn't mean that we, as outsiders, aren't in the right to condemn it. That's not what I'm saying. But people downplay October 7th. It was horrific. I don't know that they raped people. They intentionally murdered civilians, though. That's beyond, at this point, that's beyond dispute, right? Concert goers. There's allegedly footage. What would you do if your daughter was murdered there and you saw the footage of people celebrating dragging her body? What would you do? What would you want your government to do? No, Roman, we're not judging executioner. I agree. First off, I don't know that we're talking about the same video. The one I'm thinking of, I didn't think a guy died because he got up and walked away, but it was bad. He was kicking him in the head while he was down. But I'm not saying that we as a society should accept it or say that it's justified. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I understand it. If it was me, I may do the same. There's a difference. There is. So, Captain, you think that it was set up by... You think Israel killed the concert goers? I don't believe that, I'll be honest with you. Let me ask, the people that think that Israel set this all up and it was a false flag, do you think Hamas is the type of organization that would do something like this? Or do you think that they're completely legitimate, or they're not legitimate necessarily, but they're not that evil, they're not that bad? Is that what you think? I think this is another case of false flags can happen, but not everything's a false flag. I mean, I saw, which admittedly could be faked, but I saw GoPro footage of what seems to be Hamas fighters going door to door. Now, I didn't watch them pull the trigger, but they seem to be very happy. So I don't believe that Hamas was just sitting there and they're like, oh, what's happening over at that concert? Oh, crazy. Israel's bombing their own people. Oh, well, we did nothing. I don't believe that. That's a separate question, imaginary. Did Israel know it was going to happen? Maybe. All I'm saying is, I understand the reaction if it's my family that was killed. And I said this early, I want there to be a negotiation and end all violence today. I don't want anyone to die in war. That would be my preference. But I also understand If a little kid goes up and punches a big kid and nothing's there to intervene, that big kid's going to give worse than he got before cooler heads prevail. That would be a better guess, furthermore, that it was a combination of both. I have no doubt that the Israeli government, much like the United States government, even if they don't create every crisis, know how to exploit every crisis. Not every tornado was made by HARP putting waves into the ionosphere to create a tornado. I don't believe the U.S. government created Hurricane Katrina, but they exploited it. You don't know about the HARP? Come on, you're not watching enough Alex Jones? Jesse Ventura? Come on. That's HAARP. Look it up. Yeah, okay. That's within the realm of believability to me. That Israel left it happen so that they could get the reaction they wanted. But ultimately, that's my thoughts on it. And my other thought, the more important thought is, I know enough to know I don't know, and the United States should stay the hell out of it. That's what I feel. I feel the United States should not be sending $1 to Israel. Or Palestine, for that matter. Said we're funding both. That's right, Roman King. If Israel, there is no doubt that Israel has superior firepower, technology, intelligence than Hamas. They could deal with it. And if they deal with it in such a way that they drag the rest of the Middle East in, then maybe the United States operates as sort of a buffer, as a negotiator to prevent that. But we have no business helping. Why do we have ships? We know that this conflict's going on, and yet we're intentionally putting ships there, and then the Houthis attack them, and we go, oh boy, oh no, now we got to bomb Syria again. Oh boy. Anyways, that's my take. And I know people don't like that. I feel I'm one of the only people in the damn country that's consistent. Don't fund Ukraine. Don't fund Israel. Sorry. Even if you say that's isolationist and the United States needs to be the hegemon, two things to say that. One, we aren't anymore. We still are. We're still the most powerful country in the world, but we're not like as dominant as we once were. Why? Because our elected leaders have pissed away the wealth and the power of this country for decades. That's what they've done. They enriched themselves and other people around the world off the backs of United States labor and have pissed away both our hard power and soft power. That's number one. Number two, the idea that the U.S. being the world police or something, even if you could make that argument, and I've had this debate with people, that would be true in principle, the problem is the people that are tasked with doing that in our intel services and military industrial complex are either completely inept or malevolent. They are not making things better. And it's probably a combination of the two. Furthermore, there are massive and growing problems back home every day. Every day. Why is it always the poor and working class that's asked to make more sacrifices? Always. COVID? Oh, sorry, small businesses. Sorry, you got to pay more. Every war, it's not the rich people's kids going. When we send billions of dollars of aid, the inflation, it ain't hurting the rich people. Nowhere near to the level it is those of us that work paycheck to paycheck. It's always us. And hell, I'm lucky. I ain't missing many meals. But it's the people in my community. No one gives a shit about rural Pennsylvania. No one gives a shit about anybody that lives in rural America. No one. No one in the entertainment industry, no one in the corporate industry, no one in the media, none of the politicians, no one in academia. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a shit at all. By the way, they don't give a shit about people in the inner city either. They pretend to. They'll at least talk about that. They don't even talk about rural America. They don't give a fuck. Then every day I come on and I got to hear, but you don't know what those people are going through. I do. I don't know in the literal sense that I've never lived through that war. But I don't have some masochist bone in me that wants to punish myself and my family and my loved ones because we've had the good fortune to be built in a country that was built up by our ancestors. Is it bullshit that I was born here and not sub-Saharan Africa? Sure. But what am I supposed to do? Self-immolate? And the people demanding, claiming they have a big heart, most of the time they are as privileged and more so than anyone. I do. I live in Amish country. I absolutely do live in Amish country. In fact, my one house, my neighbors were all Amish. And I used to have a big beard, so I kind of fit in with them. No one gives a shit. What are we going to do? Look how far we've come. 50 years from now, when the United States, now we're in a multipolar world and we're just like a country like the UK or something. And there's all sorts of international conflicts. Will anyone take the time to say, oh, we voted ourselves into this shit? What happened? How did the dollar become so weak? How did manufacturing flee this country so much? What happened? How did our education systems get so bad? How did our border get so porous? And it'll be the same fucking politicians. We'll have Eric Swalwell will be there 40 years. And Republicans too that are shit. And they'll still be there, acting like they aren't the problem. They didn't do it. Whose fault is it? We don't know. It's not ours. It's yours. That's what they'll say. And we keep voting for the shit. Over and over and over. Rob, did you know this country here, they're having some sort of ethnic cleansing? We got to send a couple billion there. I'm sorry, that sounds horrible, but that money's not going to help. Who was it? Ron Paul said, foreign aid is taking money from poor people in this country and giving it to rich people in others. Of course, the authoritarians use the language of the left and cultural Marxism to divide us on all sorts of shit. They're not so interested in dividing us on class anymore. Race, though. Sex. Sexuality. Any other fucking criteria you could come up with. But they don't want people in the inner city coming together with people in rural America to see like, oh, wait, we might have differences and disagreements, but we're all being fucked here. They don't want that. What do I tell my kid when he grows up and the United States is no longer the superpower? Whose fault is it really? There's a scene in V for Vendetta, right? Which I like that movie, and fuck that one guy in the Crucibles chat that gave me shit for it one time. I don't care if it's a leftist allegory, whatever. There's a scene where V first takes over all the TV stations in the emergency broadcast network, and he plays this message, and he says, a year from now we're going to meet, and we're going to go to like the seat of government, and we're going to take back our country. And at the beginning of it, he starts talking about how did it get this bad? How did it get this corrupt? Everybody knows something's wrong. And there certainly are those that are more to blame than others. But if you really want to know who's at fault, look in the mirror. And that's true. I could bitch about my representatives. I can. I could complain about all sorts of things, and God knows I do it. But at the end of the day, I'm at fault. What have I really done? I don't want to be some figure in history. I don't give a shit about that. I want to be a dad. That's what I want to do. I want to hang out with my family. And I do, and I'm lucky. But we see that we're in that phase, right? At the end of the day, it is night. That's true. I didn't look at it that way. Weak people do create hard times. And that's where we're at. We're at the weak people part. Hard times are coming. You try to avoid that. You try to wake people up now before it's too late, before you get to the hard times. But I'm not successful. And I could do way more. It's everyone but you. Yeah, that's true. So, I'm sorry. I understand emotional appeals to other countries. It's horrific. The wars would end in Ukraine and Israel like that if I had ultimate authority. I don't want to see people starving to death. I don't want to see people dying in wars. I don't. But what can I reasonably do? If my power to influence is, one, my ability to sit here and speak in as small amount of an audience as I had, try to push the ideas that I have, and second, my power to vote, to influence our politics to whatever extent that works, which you should vote, don't get me wrong. What should my message be? Worry about the world? Worry about other countries? I guess fuck these people, right? Oh, by the way, anybody have to answer for COVID and the lockdowns and all that shit yet? No, we skipped right over that, right? One of the largest transfers of wealth from the poor and working class to the upper class in the history of this country. But we just sort of moved right on. Did you get that, Jesus cow? Did a little moo there for it? Anyways, on to Ukraine. Well, now we're on to Israel-Palestine. What next? What will the future hold? That's why I focus on corruption. Because to me, I could handle a left-winger with bad economic ideas who truly gives a shit about the people. I can handle a system of people that disagree with me and that idea wins, but they give a shit. What we can't handle is that all of that's irrelevant because the people running the show don't give a shit. And they have more sophisticated tools every day to be able to influence people to get outcomes that they want. Anyways, that's the show for tonight. So if you're just tuning in, I'll try to stream tomorrow night. Wednesday night at 8 p.m. I have a debate with Pondering on Devon Archer's testimony of all things. I'm a centrist. I consider myself a right-leaning populist. I consider myself almost libertarian-adjacent right-winger, but first and foremost a populist. What are my hobbies? Streaming, hang out with my kid. Do I believe in aliens? They probably exist. So, Wednesday I'll be doing debate on the Devon Archer thing. It might be true furthermore. I don't know. But I don't take those numbers at face value. There's certainly more than I'm comfortable with. I do not play guitar. I played trumpet and French horn in high school. Poorly. I was okay, I guess, but legal aliens definitely exist. My hobby is hard. Yeah, it's very stressful. My social battery is drained. So that'll be... I was supposed to do Tim Pool's show Friday, but that looks to be off now. So we'll try to stream more from home when I get home, Thursday night, Friday. Probably take the weekend off. Looks like the Tim Pool show's been rescheduled to the 15th. Is what we're looking at. So, unless something comes up. They asked 15th or the week after that. I can't do the week after that because... And I won't be streaming the week after the 15th almost at all because my wife has a trip planned and I'm going to be single dadding it for the week. And I'm certainly not going to be streaming. And I'm really looking forward to it. I love spending time. Don't get me wrong. Time with wife and son together is best. But time for dad-son time to get into shenanigans without mom reining us in will be funny too. I'm sure we'll screw something up. We'll break a dishwasher or a lamp or some stuff. And mom will be upset. But so yeah, that's what's going on schedule wise. I really want to start doing more short form stuff. I would love to get an editor. If I had extra money, that's what I would do. I would get an editor to clip 5-minute or 4-minute segments of me doing these live streams and then edit it and put a thumbnail up and put it on YouTube. I would absolutely love that. I think it would encourage more people. It'd make me more accessible to come in. But for the time being, is Tim paying for my plane ticket? I'll drive. I'm only about 4 hours away. By the time I would drive to the nearest airport, then fly there, then get a rental car, it'll be quicker and less pain to just drive there. It'll probably be a 4-hour drive for me. Yeah, well, Jojo, we'll see, man. I'll get in touch with you here soon. Yeah, it sucks at the temple, but let me be honest. And please don't take this the wrong way. When it comes to criticizing Tim Pool. I will be low man on the totem pole for that show. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, let's say they're trying to schedule me and someone to debate me on March 1st. And then Don Jr. calls him and says, hey, I'd like to come on the show on March 1st. You think they're going to be like, nah, we've already told this robnoerr guy. Rob who? Oh, some guy no one's ever heard of. We're going to have him on the show. Because Ian likes him. So I can't really be upset. I understand. And I don't think they just brushed me aside. I think they're having difficulty finding someone willing to debate me. Because what would I bring? Realistically, if you're the Krasenstein brothers, or who are the big lefties that I could debate? Sam Cedar, the Krasensteins, Dave Pakman, Cenk Uygur. Right? Kyle Kalinske. What do they have to gain by debating me? Right? It's not exactly an appealing offer. And if they looked into me and was like, wow, that guy's actually a good debater. Destiny actually is doing something that's really smart, which is he is debating large public figures. And I'm here to tell you that many of the large public figures on the right aren't the best debaters. I'm not saying that means that they're terrible people or whatever. Now, there are a lot of people that are big right-wing influencers that I think are just dog shit. Ian Miles Chung, that crew. They're getting, tens of thousands of likes on tweets and shit. And it's just, to me, it's just, what do you think about this? Like the Krasenstein's doing on the left. What is it really doing? It's just, they've learned how to manipulate the algorithm and blah, blah, blah. But that's not all of them. They're big right-wing... Again, debate is a skill. It don't mean shit at the end of the day. It's just one thing. What is the whole point of me debating? Well, I would like to influence people who are maybe center or slightly left or slightly right to come to more of my position. That's what I would like to do. And then the people that already have my position, I hope that they are entertained and informed by what I'm doing. That's what I... But if you could inform and entertain your audience and bring people from the center, and you're not a debater, you're just putting videos up by yourself, does that mean that I'm a better person than that person because I debate? No. Not at all. Like, you might be a tremendous boxer. Okay, that's a skill. That's something to be proud of, but at the end of the day, so I'm not saying there are many types of streaming and influencers and stuff. I'm just saying that a lot of times I'm left saying, I feel I could have done better. Yeah, it's not a bad idea, McLinebacker. Yeah, okay, it doesn't move the needle. When I debate Destiny, it's his audience is going to think he won, my audience is going to think I won, and he has a bigger audience. So, thank you, Nico, I appreciate it. So that's just the way it kind of goes. But no, Destiny's very smart to be out there debating these big public figures. And honestly, kudos to him. And kudos to him for two reasons. One, because regardless of what you think about Destiny, yeah, AJW's pretty good. I thought AJW could have did better. I think he was being a little too buddy-buddy with Destiny in his last debate. But yeah, he's good. But I agree with you, Roman. There's not a lot of strong right-wing debaters. Destiny's putting a lot of work in. He does. He's traveling. He streams a lot. And so, it's something that I'll even say about the guy I'm debating Wednesday, Pondering, who was formerly Ruminate. Pondering's channel's like blown up on YouTube. Now, does he have incredible advantages over me? Yeah, he has legitimate advantages, such as YouTube tends to have a younger type audience that tend to be more left-leaning, so they're going to be there. But there's also illegitimate advantages, as like the algorithm on YouTube screws me constantly. They're constantly giving me community strikes. But Pondering's worked really hard in the past 6-7 months to build his audience up. And even if it's someone whose opinions and beliefs I don't like, I could recognize when someone's working hard and is rewarded for that. So that's number one. But the other reason is, if you're a streamer, even a right-wing streamer, you should actually like the fact that Destiny's talking to Jordan Peterson, and that he's on Piers Morgan's show, and that he's debating Ben Shapiro. Why? Because getting public figures in a more traditional and a completely different audience that's a big audience, familiar with the online debate sphere, only increases the chances that everyone would have an opportunity to do that at some point. That could be true, Judah. So, kudos to him, for real. So, I would enjoy debating Destiny on Tim Pool. I'm afraid what'll probably happen on Tim Pool's show is they're not going to find someone for me to debate, and so it'll probably be someone I agree with that's sort of unrelated to me, which is fine. I don't mind that. I think I'll do good in that show as well. I just hope it's someone that's at least kind of talks about similar things than me. Yeah, Destiny has a lot of things going that make him a lot of tactics in a debate that make him seem like he's winning an issue even if he's not. And I don't know how well Finkelstein will be able to deal with that. But hopefully it's a debate that's entertaining. I'll watch it. I'm somewhere in the middle, in that debate. Like, I already gave my opinion. I think both sides are shit, and we should stay out of it. But yeah, Alex Jones was a terrible debater. He was terrible in that debate with the Krasensteins and Destiny. Is Destiny a good guy? I don't know. I don't know. Am I a good guy? I don't know. All I can say about Destiny is this. I've heard stories, but I hear those stories about Andrew Wilson. And Andrew's a good guy. Rob, you're just saying that because you agree with Andrew. I've debated Andrew as much as I've debated on the same side as him. I have serious disagreements with Andrew Wilson. I am not a Christian nationalist. In fact, I'm probably closer in my beliefs to someone like Casimir and Fabian Liberty than I am Andrew Wilson. And yet, I can recognize we agree on important ideas, and more importantly, then I think he's a good guy, regardless if I agree or disagree with him. All I can say about Destiny, given that, is that I've heard, I try not to judge people based on things that I haven't personally seen and interacted with. Because you never know what kind of bullshit, especially if you're a bigger streamer, what kind of bullshit people are saying. And the other thing is, as far as my interactions behind the scene with Destiny, there's been no animosity whatsoever. He's helped me out on a couple technical issues, allowed me to, one time I thought I was recording a debate with him and it didn't record. He allowed me to take the video and audio of his. He said, no problem, go for it. He knows that I'm difficult to deal with and yet still is willing to have me in a show. I don't even know if I should say this, but as far as I know, I've been given permission on his Discord. I can hop in his channel anytime I want when he's streaming. Which he does with some of the Orbiters. And I don't do that because I find it presumptuous and I wouldn't do that to someone. But so I don't have anything negative to say about him on a personal level. I think his politics are dog shit. I'm not looking to be his best friend or anything like that. I'm not. I'm not getting paid by left-wing groups to go hang out with him hoping that I can get some of his audience and siphon off. Fuck all that shit. But that's just my honest take. But I have a lot of left-wing friends. I'm able to separate the politics, maybe to my detriment. Maybe that's why I won't be the person to move the needle. Maybe we need someone who's more cutthroat than I am. But all I could be is who I am. And I think I'm pretty good at what I do. But it is what it is. Call into JSTLK. I don't know what that is. Just talk? Peterson? Is that who you're talking about? Sounds like Kermit the Frog. I've heard people say that. No, I think Vosh is way worse than Destiny. I don't even think there's a comparison. Yeah, right? Get some of that Dem Superman. 5 Lauren Pisco. Yeah, great debater. So disappointed. It's very disappointing when you see. It's like this Pondering that I'm debating. He's like Pisco's little sidekick. I think Pondering's a bad guy. I think he's a hack. But I don't think he's a bad guy. I think didn't Destiny talk to Jordan Peterson? I don't know that they debated. I think it was billed as a conversation. I could be wrong. I thought that happened. Let's see. Yeah, it looked like it was some sort of panel. Climate change. I don't know what channel it was on, but they even did a rap battle of it. It's only 10 minutes, 66. Yeah, I don't know. I say this. I don't watch a lot of this content. You know, it's a little different than when I did. Like, when I did policy debate, I'm doing a lot of research. I'm preparing. I don't do that now. This is my hobby. Now, if I know I'm debating, just pick a random name, right? If I'm debating Philip Bump from the Washington Post on Tim Pool's show on the 15th, you're damn right I'm going to prepare. I'm going to do some research. Don't get me wrong. But like, I'm debating Pondering Wednesday. I'm not going to do any research. I could. Oh, he's on part 4 of the Her Report. It still hasn't got to that CHS being indicted. It's still part 4 of the Her Report. We'll get to it eventually. Whatever. Yeah, Hassan, if I was debating Hassan, you know. But, you know, normally... And I could, look, one of the things I used to tell my debaters, I would hear this all the time when I was debate coach in college. People would say, I just didn't have time. Yeah, you did. You didn't have time to do a half-hour practice? No, I didn't have time. Yeah, you did. You chose to do something else. And that's the truth with me. Could I end this stream right now and start doing research for my debate Wednesday? I could. I'm not going to. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to end this stream, and I got laundry to change, and I got a couple dishes to put in the dishwasher, or pull out of the dishwasher. I already put them in. I'm going to put those away, and then I'm going to come, lay in bed, and probably find something to watch on Netflix. Last night, I watched what I feel is an underrated movie, the movie Dredd. The newer Judge Dredd movie, not the Sylvester Stallone one, which I also like. But I like the movie Dredd. Just don't get me wrong. There is a point. There is politics to the universe of Judge Dredd, but you could just be mind numbed and watch them blowing a bunch of people up. That's fine by me. So yeah, Dredd's good. I thought it was good. I've read a couple Dredd comics. I think this adaptation's much closer to the feel of the comic than the Stallone. But yeah, I mean, the Stallone Dredd was fun. I still don't think Stallone Dredd's as good as Demolition Man, which also Stallone, similar vibe. I love Demolition Man. I think it's a great movie. Play Broforce. Yeah, I've seen of it, but Diane Lane. But I always say, if this was my job, if I was a full-time streamer, then I would do much more research. I would, right? But it's not. It's a hobby. And did you do homework for fun? No, you didn't. That's how I feel. So we'll roll into this video. Someday it'll cost me. Someday I'll get my ass kicked. Maybe it'll be Wednesday. Maybe Pondering will whoop my ass in this debate on Devon Archer on Wednesday. Demolition Man 2 in the works? With Stallone? It's going to have Rob Schneider. Wesley Snipes bringing back the old crew. It'll be alright. Even, oh my gosh, Demolition... Dennis Leary is in Demolition Man? Yeah, Carl Urban, he didn't take off the helmet. It shows him put, like, his silhouette put the helmet on at the beginning of the movie, but yeah, he never takes it off. Yeah, how do the seashells work? Yeah. Everybody knows. That's yeah, maybe they'll get to the bottom of it. That'll have to be the director's cut that's not rated. They'll show you how they use the seashells to wipe their ass. That's the real content. That's what people want to see. It's a funny joke. That's such a clever joke, though. It's just like, huh? I also like, yeah, they're talking about the fast food wars. Taco Bell won the fast food wars. Yeah, it's funny. It's a good movie. And I like that stuff. I think I grew up, I was born in 84, so I grew up in, like, every summer there was, like, you're going to have one Stallone and one Arnold mindless action movie. It was great. It was a great time to be alive. MacGyver's a playable character in Broforce. Yeah, washboard. I don't know. You figure in the future bidets would be, right? If it was really a concern, they would just be bidets. But I have a friend that swears by the bidet. I've never used one, but he actually had 2 bidets in his home. It's a true story. I believe he downgraded to 1, but at one point he had 2. So just don't like you no more. I'm sorry, go to the Demolition Man conversation too much. Imagine that there's someone like, you know what? Rob's political takes, all right, take them, leave them. I find him entertaining. I enjoy listening. Then you start talking about demolition, and they're just like, what? It wasn't the Ukraine position, not the border, but I can't handle the Demolition Man talk. That's too much. Done. I want my sub money back. Demolition Man. Oh, good God. Bidet's doing the work, though, yeah. Alrighty, let's get you out of here. Let's see if there's anyone to raid on Twitch. Supposedly, I think you could raid people on YouTube as well. I don't know how. And I don't know how, even if I did know how, I don't know how to raid on both. If that's a possibility. I don't know. Who's on? Lecture Fan. Lecture Fan's good. Let's raid him. He's probably about to end. That's usually the way it works now. Every time I raid someone, they go, "Oh, I was just leaving." Can you hear? Just opening up a window. You hear my computer heating up? It'll probably crash before I do the raid. It's terrible. Better content than Tim Poitras. I can't say that. I'm trying to get in Tim's show. No, Tim's way better than me. His choice in headwear is much better, too. So, all right. Thank you all so much. I should be back around between 8 and 9 p.m. tomorrow, something like that. Really appreciate you all. I do. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry if people are let down that I'm not going to be on Tim Pool this Friday. I'm a little bummed out, too. But I'm incredibly grateful. And I should, and someone mentioned this, and I did mention his name, but special shout out to Ian Crossland. Please go check out Ian's show on YouTube. He really has gone to bat for me, and I'm incredibly appreciative. And even though there's been scheduling conflicts and stuff, I am not embittered at all. I understand that if bigger people come along and it's difficult to find someone to debate me, totally get it. So no animosity whatsoever to the people on Tim Pool's team. Hopefully I get on there on the 15th. If not, we'll go to bat in April, see what we can do. But hopefully no one's let down by that, and we'll be doing it soon. So thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you all tomorrow evening. As always, have a good one.